Hello everyone, we are hanging out on the Star Wars The Old Republic test server not too long before the expansion is slated to come out on February 15th, 2022. It will be called Legacy of the Sith. We are checking out the Jedi Consular Sage, or rather just the Sage in the expansion, because you may be able to take this on different origin stories than you could before. We are going to take a quick look into the Seer, Telekinetics, and Balance trees for this class on the test server. The test server is not completely finished. We don't know how close this is to the final round of changes, but we are taking a good look at how it has changed so far compared to live. So basically, I'm going to go through the trees and show you guys what abilities are on there and what choices you have to make. I'm starting with Telekinetics because Telekinetics is a class I actually do play and really like. It's a lot of fun, and between that and its mirror lightning, definitely probably a fan favorite, I would say. So let's take a look at this tree. You'll notice I have Telekinetics selected right here, and I have a tree right here that shows my abilities directly related to telekinetics. Some of the icons are duplicates, so you may notice, hey look, there's a rock here. Does that mean I don't get force project until level 35? No, these icons, some of them are just kind of placeholders or different passives related to telekinetics or choices that you have to make. So right away at level 1, you will have your tidal force, which is kind of a key part of telekinetics and how it works. And at level 23, kind of like before, you will get your imbued force armor, which is your better known as your bubble, which surrounds the target in a force shield that absorbs damage and lasts up to 30 seconds. The target becomes force imbalanced and cannot benefit from force armor again for 20 seconds. When under the effect of force imbalance, you gain 5% damage reduction. And you'll get your telekinetic wave, your wonderful zoom ability. Sends a wave of telekinetic energy that deals kinetic damage to up to 8 targets within 8 meters of the primary target. Additionally, telekinetic wave immobilizes all affected targets for 0.5 seconds and slows all affected targets by 50% for 6 seconds. Telekinetic wave overwhelms its targets for 45 seconds. Overwhelmed targets take an additional 10% damage from area attacks. So it looks like there was some bit of changes there. And what's especially interesting is that at level 27, you will get to make a decision, a choice, that will somehow affect telekinetic wave. And you have 3 options to choose from. So your first level 27 choice as a telekinetic sage is Power of the Force. And this is actually it replaces telekinetic wave. So you'll have 2 options that are passive that just affect telekinetic wave, and one that replaces telekinetic wave. So if you decide to replace it, it's called Power of the Force. It sends a wave of telekinetic energy that deals kinetic damage to up to a single target. Awkward wording, but it's making it more clear that this becomes a very single target attack. Additionally, Power of the Force immobilizes all affected targets for seconds. About the same thing, I think. Hang on. Yes, so it's exactly the same, but Power of the Force makes telekinetic wave become a single target only attack. And second up is a passive that will affect your old school original telekinetic wave, called Mysteries of the Force. Dealing damage with telekinetic wave builds stacks of Mysteries of the Force, increasing the healing done by Force Mend and reducing its cooldown. And so Force Mend is your little self-heal. So this can kind of be used defensively. If you're taking a lot of damage, you can more easily heal yourself. And the third option is Dormant Tremors. Telekinetic wave applies tremors to all targets it hits. The next force quake erupts the tremors, doing additional damage. So this makes it especially strong as a multi-target attack, because you'll attack multiple targets with your old school telekinetic wave. And then when you use force quake, you'll hit them even more than you did before. This is going to be a fun one to switch between. The choice of when you should choose which one is pretty clear. Do you need more healing? Do you need more single target damage? Do you need more multiple target damage? Real fun choice there. At level 35, you'll have a choice between 3 different somethings. One's a passive, one is a multi-target attack, and one is a threat drop, and defensive. This is a really weird choice. So at level 35, you get to choose between Cloud Mind, which clouds the mind of your enemies, instantly lowering your threat by a moderate amount. Activating Cloud Mind grants Blackout, which increases damage reduction by 25% for 6 seconds. The second option is Forceful Retribution. So the first one here, Cloud Mind, is something you actually had before, and players who are better at playing their class use it highly as a defensive ability, and they also used it as a way to say, boss, stop attacking me, please go attack the tank in bigger fights at a high level. And Cloud Mind is now a choice in the tree. It's no longer something that's automatically in your abilities list. So if you log in on when the expansion launches and you notice, hey, where's my Cloud Mind? Well, it's in the tree and it's a choice you make. The second option is something I don't think we've seen before. It's called Forceful Retribution. It fires a blast of telekinetic energy at the target, dealing kinetic damage to up to 3 enemies. So I think it's another multi-target attack. I'm wondering if they added it because before, if I remember right, when you're attacking multiple enemies, you just kind of use Telekinetic Wave and Force Quake, and that's about it. Maybe they're trying to add something else there in the mix. Someone will have to do the math somewhere along the way and see if it's worth using at all. And lastly, Clarity is a passive, and it changes the way Project, your little rock that you throw, works. Project deals bonus damage to slowed targets and increases your movement speed by 20%. So it also makes you go faster just by default, and it also does extra damage to slowed targets, possibly using your force slow somewhere along the way. I wonder if that one might be good for PvP, but I don't know. So that was a very weird choice. That was very different than the last time we looked on the test server. So at level 39, we're going to have Turbulence. I'm going to go see if I can find some music. So you'd pick up Turbulence at level 39, kind of like how you would before. Turbulence is a major part of the Telekinetic Sage discipline. At level 43, however, you get an ability, a passive ability, a choice between 3 that will majorly affect how Turbulence works for you. Your first option is going to be Incoming Turbulence. Turbulence increases the damage of your next telekinetic wave by 5%. So just a straight up damage boost for Telekinetic Wave. Second is Mental Disparity. Dealing damage with Turbulence ticks Weakened Mind. And that's kind of something that I think we had before. You would put Weakened Mind on one of your enemies, and then you could just do your normal rotation and it would never quite fall off. This one might be part of the tree now. I don't remember what normally used to tick it before. And third is Off Balance. Targets hit by Turbulence are immobilized for 2 seconds. And so if you want some stuns, there you go. That's where you get it from. So at level 47, you'll have another choice to make. And this is where the choices start to blend between the 3 trees after this. So this will be like kind of the last telekinetic specific choice that you'll make. So at level 47, you'll choose between 3 things. One of them is instant ability and 2 of them are passive. So the middle one here is Force Empowerment. And this is one of those abilities that you had before. This was considered your group buff, your raid buff that affects your entire group and not just yourself. So someone, once again, is going to have to do the math and kind of see what's worth it here. However, it's pretty clear that if you're not dying, you should probably pick this one up because it increases both your and your operation groups. Endurance, Presence, and Mastery, which should increase your damage. But the other option is, if you don't need that, and you'd rather some defensive, this is interesting. The first option is Defensive Blast. Turbulence grants Defensive Blast, which increases your damage reduction by 5% for 18 seconds. So if you need to stay alive longer, might want to pick that one up. And the other option is a different defensive ability. Enhanced Force Armor increases all healing received by 5% and increases damage absorbed by Force Armor by 10%. So I'm not really sure out of the 2 which would be better. It's probably very situational. And then if you want to buff your entire group or yourself with damage, you would pick up Force Empowerment there. At level 51, you'll get your Telekinetic Gust, the second last important ability for telekinetics. And at level 60, you'll make a choice, but this is actually across all 3. So your choice will be Telekinetic Defense. Wait, is it? Yeah, it's still called Telekinetic Defense if you're playing Balance. So Telekinetic Defense. Your force armor reverberates with force energy, blasting attackers for energy damage when it absorbs direct damage to you. This effect does not affect force armors placed on allies and cannot occur more than once each second. So this is a very silly one. You may have noticed, if you're familiar with the utility system, that some of the utilities have kind of made their way into this tree, and you can choose them if you want them. They're not always the best choice. Some of them are just for fun. Some of them are situational. Not all the utilities made it into the tree, but some of them did. So that's one of the ones that used to be a utility, and you can do damage when you take damage if you have force armor on. The second is force mobility, and this is Turbulence, Healing Trance, and Force Serenity can be activated while moving. I think this one's really a fan favorite of telekinetics players who like to run around and shoot things with their balls of lightning. I mean, their balls of rocks and light. And lastly, Resistance, which is just a pure increases damage reduction by 3%. So good if you're taking damage and you need to take less. So second, next up is our final telekinetics ability will be Telekinetic Burst. We will pick it up at level 64. And then we get into the high level choices. These high level choices are going to be the same across all 3 disciplines here. So at level 68, we have 3 options and they're 3 passives. So your first option is Metaphysical Alacrity. Reduces the cooldowns of Force Speed by 5 seconds and Force Barrier by 30 seconds. In addition, Force Speed lasts 0.5 seconds longer. Mental Alacrity increases your movement speed by 100% while active, and the active cooldown of Force Speed is finished when Force Barrier ends. So little bit of everything there. Second up is Valorous Spirit. Force Mend increases your damage reduction by 15% for 6 seconds. Additionally, reduces the cooldown of Force Mend by 5 seconds, so that's your little heal. So if you need more healing, I guess that's the one you'd take. And lastly, Kinetic Collapse. Force armors you place on yourself erupt in a flash of light when they end, blinding up to 8 nearby enemies for 3 seconds. This effect breaks from direct damage, so a fun little group stun when your force armor falls off. So next up is, at level 73, another choice of 3. However, it's between 3 true abilities. At level 73 is an important choice for every single discipline and class in the game. There's not one that hasn't been hit with at least a little bit of an important choice. So for new players, you're going to be excited. At level 73, you've got an interesting choice to make, and you get one of 3 very interesting abilities. If you're an existing player, or a returning player, you may realize that, oh no, I now have to choose between possibly 3 important abilities, and I wanted all 3 because I had them all before. We also took a look at the Jedi Knight Guardian earlier, and at level 73, that choice is really hard. Really hard. Luckily for the Sage, things get a little easier. You'd still probably want all 3, as always, we want everything, but it's a little easier to choose which one, and it's not quite as horrible to have to choose one. So here are your 3 options. So your first is Telekinetic Blitz, your second is Force Lift, and your third is Phase Walk, and I'll go through those in a second. But Telekinetic Blitz is a attack. It was available at a high level in the previous expansion, but what's interesting is no one really used it, especially as a telekinetics sage, because people had basically done the math and decided it just wasn't worth using in comparison to combining your other abilities in ways that could do more damage while just leaving that out altogether. There was some weird stuff you could do with healing. I don't really understand where you could use Telekinetic Blitz, but we don't know now. No one's done some extra math yet about what's coming up for the expansion to see if maybe Telekinetic Blitz has become a more viable option. But for the most part, I think players are just going to not choose Telekinetic Blitz unless they like the look of it and want to go pew-pew some enemies on Tython. But here's what Telekinetic Blitz looks like right now. Deals kinetic damage to your target and leaves you feeling empowered for up to 5 seconds. The empowered effect can stack 3 times, with each stack increasing Telekinetic Blitz damage by 30%. The ability has 3 charges and recharges every 10 seconds. Volt Rush deals 10% more damage, and if applicable, healing. Second is Force Lift. Force Lift is an interesting ability. Before the expansion, like I said, we did have it on our abilities bar. And basically you use it outside of big fights. Outside of big fights, not while you're fighting a boss. And you don't use it that much in PvP, I think, because damage will break the effect prematurely, unless you're trying to go like capture a node or something like that. But Force Lift is super, super, super useful and most well known for when you're running through operations or flashpoints. You can pull one enemy up into the air and get them out of the fight temporarily. So basically, when you're in a boss fight, you're not going to want this, and when you're running around operation, you're probably going to want it. And Phase Walk. Phase Walk we also had before, and it's a very cool ability if you're not familiar with it. Phase Walk allows you to put down a little portal on the ground and allows you to teleport back to it after you've run away from it. And it's very, very useful for anything movement focused, both in operations and in PvP, and probably could even put it to good use in flashpoints, though it's not super, super useful when you're running around playing casual content, though its main use seems to be finding datacrons. So at level 78, you will have the option between 3 abilities again. The first one is Aggress. Force Speed grants Aggress, removing all movement impairing effects and granting immunity to them for the duration. So this one's super useful if you get rooted in place, you get stuck, then you're allowed to use Force Speed to not get stuck. This is useful in a lot of fights. Second is Confound. Targets affected by your weakened mind are slowed by 30% for its duration. And lastly, Mind Ward reduces the damage taken by all periodic effects by 15%. And trolling. Right. We also use Phase Walk for trolling. Very, very important there. So let's take a look at these abilities that we have on the right-hand side now for the telekinetic stage specifically. I'm going to just show these on the screen, so you'll have to kind of read them yourself. So Tidal Force, Telekinetic Effusion, Concentration. So you'll notice some of these have kind of been renamed or combined, so you may have to double check them with if you're familiar with your other passes from before. Mental Momentum, Clamoring Force, Telekinetic Momentum, Telekinetic Focal Point, Tremors, and lastly at level 78, Magnifying Vibrations. So we have taken a look at the telekinetics discipline, and now we're going to go check out Balance. I'll say wonderful Seer heals for last. So in Balance, much like the other classes, at level 1 right away, you'll get Telekinetic Balance, kind of key focus for your Balance class. And you'll pick up as well Mending Force Armor, much like Telekinetics has. But for Balance, you're going to pick up your, Force and Balance ability, which deals internal damage and redistributes life from affected targets to heal you for 10% of the damage dealt. Strikes up to 8 targets within a 5-meter radius. So this is much like you had before. But what's cool is at level 27, you'll get to make a choice about your Force and Balance that affects the way it works. So all 3... Okay, so you've got 2 passives you can choose from that affect your Force and Balance, and 1 replacement. They even made it a different icon color. To those of you who are colorblind, it's even slightly different. So this one's green. So if you decide to replace your Force and Balance, which is normally a multi-enemy attack, like it's a big circle you put on the ground if I remember right. This one changes it to become single target attack. So deals single target internal damage and applies force suppression, increases lifesteal by 50%, replaces Force and Balance. So if you want Force and Balance, you want to become a balance sage that mostly focuses on 1 target, you can do that with Shift and Balance. Someone will have to do the math and see if it's actually worth it though. And then next up, your other 2 options are when a charge of force suppression is consumed, there's a 50% chance for a force suppression charge to not be consumed. Ooh, and that one's called Consuming Light. And your other option is One with the Force. Force suppression heals the caster for 1% of their health when they are consumed. So if you want a little more heals, that's the way to do it. Next up is at level 35, you'll have a choice to make. Oh, what a wonderful title for this one. So our middle choice is Cloud Mind, kind of like Telekinetics. had to choose Cloud Mind if they wanted it. Balance also has to choose Cloud Mind, which is still a defensive and aggro drop, threat drop. If you want it, you gotta choose it at level 35, but you have two other options. The first one is interesting. It's called Destructive Wave, and it replaces Disturbance. It replaces your purple attack right here, your Disturbance, and it's called Destruction Wave. Fires a blast of telekinetic energy at the target, dealing kinetic damage to up to 3 enemies within 10 meters. So it's kind of interesting. At level 27, you can make Force and Balance become a single target attack. And at level 35, you can make Disturbance become a multi-target attack. So it's very interesting how Balance is kind of allowing you that chance to shift around between the two. And the third option is called Teachings of Rajavari. So I hope you guys, you lore buffs, know why I'm excited about that. Project finishes off all your directly applied damage over time effects at once, dealing their remaining damage. The cooldown for Project is increased by 12 seconds. Kind of interesting. I don't really know where that's going to fit into things for Project. Maybe it's supposed to make Project a little more viable to use. So once again, someone will have to do the math and see how that affects things. So really interesting choices in this balance tree so far. At level 39, you'll pick up Sever Force, much like you would before. But at level 43, you'll get to choose something that changes the way Sever Force works. And you've got 3 passive abilities to choose from. So you've got Center Point. Sever Force has a 30% chance to deal damage up to 4 targets within 10 meters of the initial target. So makes it, once again, very interesting. This is a single target attack. This makes it deal damage to multiple targets around it. The second option is Shatter Connection. Dealing damage with Sever Force shatters the connection to the force of the target, consuming 2 stacks of force suppression and dealing increased damage. And lastly, Returning Light. Applying Sever Force reduces the cooldown of Force Potency by 2 seconds. This effect can only occur once every 5 seconds. These are such weird and interesting changes. I'm very curious to see how balanced players feel about these, because they're very much optional changes to the way your class functions as a whole. At level 47, you'll get a choice again. And this one's kind of similar in that at level 47, much like Telekinetics, if you want your raid buff, your force empowerment, that affects your whole operation group, you need to choose it at 47. So here's what the other 2 options are for balance though. The first is Enhanced Force Speed. Periodic damage reduces the cooldown of force speed by 3 seconds. This effect can only occur once every 5 seconds. So basically if you're doing a fight that has a periodic damage and has a need to move, a need for speed, could be useful, I guess. Warden of the Force is your second option. Dealing critical damage with your damage over time abilities increases your damage reduction by 5% for 10 seconds, stacks up to 3 times, so it makes you more defensive. And then that last option is your very offensive Force Empowerment. At level 51, you'll pick up Force Serenity. And at level 60, you'll start on those kind of choices that are similar to Telekinetics. And just like Telekinetics, you'll pick up your final ability at 64, which will be Vanquish. That's just part of the balance rotation. And then at level 73, you'll also make that kind of difficult choice of Telekinetic Blitz, Force Lift, and Phase Walk, which isn't actually too hard to choose between. Okay, lastly, we'll go through this this stuff on the side here. So we've got Telekinetic Balance at level 1, Force Suppression at level 23, Psychic Barrier at level 35, Abundant Justice at level 43, Critical Kinesis at level 51, at level 60, Rippling Force, at level 68, Mental Scarring, at level 73, Focused Insight, and level 78, Psychokinetic Torrent. And once again, some of those have kind of been renamed or mashed together compared to what they were on the live server. So if you're familiar with the buffs, you'll just kind of have to go through and look at those passives yourself. Our last tree for the Sage. I keep wanting to say Jedi Consular Sage, but that doesn't mean anything anymore. Is going to be the Seer. So the Sage, Seer, the Jedi healer. This is a very, very popular healer. Probably one of those popular healing styles in the game, I would think, between the 3 different types. And it's not one that I play very well, but it is one I have had a chance to heal with in some veteran mode operations and stuff like that. So let's take a look at this tree. So once again, you're going to get that... Is it different? Oh, it's different. You'll notice that that purple, that force armor thing is there. Oh, it was actually different. It's actually different for all 3. It's interesting. Okay, so for a Seer, your force armor surrounds the target in a force shield that absorbs damage and lasts up to 30 seconds. The target becomes force imbalanced and cannot benefit from force armor again in 20 seconds. Reduces the force consumed by force armor by 15 and reduces the duration of force imbalance by 5 seconds. Additionally, increases the amount of damage absorbed by your force armor by 10%. Hang on, how are they actually different? Oh, I think when you're on a Seer, it makes it easier to share with your friends. I think is the idea here. Okay. And right away at level 23, you'll get Deliverance, one of your major healing abilities, much like you would before. But at level 27, once again, things get interesting, and you get to choose something that affects the way your Deliverance ability works. So your first option replaces Deliverance. Your other 2 are a passive buff. So, Deliverance is a single target heal. Just heals a big old chunk of health to them. And at level 27, you have the option. I love the icon. It's 2 little people. So 1 little person, 2 little people. Heals up to 2 friendly targets for a big chunk of damage. Replaces Deliverance. Hang on here. Does it have a longer cooldown, maybe? I'm trying to figure out why it heals the same amount right now. That'll probably be changed. I'm looking at the numbers. We're on the test server, so things are funky. But at the moment, on the test server, it has the same requirements, same activation time, same amount of force required, but it heals 2 targets for the same amount as a single target heal. Pick that one. But the second option, which may have made it, may make it more strong, is Sustained Aura. Deliverances applies Sustained Aura, which heals the target for a big chunk of damage over 12 seconds. So here's the idea of choosing between the tree. So you can have plain old Deliverance, which heals a chunk of damage. Keeper of the Peace, which heals 2 targets for a big old chunk of damage. Sustained Aura, which is the second option, which will heal the original target for a big old chunk of damage, plus an extra big old chunk of damage. So example, if you're healing your tank who's taking most of the damage, they need the most health. And lastly, the option is Hastening Call. After casting Deliverance, you're granted haste, making your next Deliverance instant. This event can occur once every 10 seconds. So I'm guessing this one's if you need big heals and you need them now. There's definitely some fights where that could be useful. Okay, next up at level 35, you got a choice to make, and you'll notice that the healer tree kind of is a bit different than the 2 offensive trees, because the healer doesn't need to change the way their attack abilities work. They do need to change the way their heals work, but we're going to see more of a focus on like defensives and movement stuff, as far as I can tell. So at 35, you still get your choice of Cloud Mind, which is, once again, for the healer, a defensive and threat drop ability, and you choose it at 35, but your other 2 options are 2 passives. The first are Benevolent Haste. Benevolence increases the movement speed of the target by 50% for 6 seconds. This effect cannot occur more than once every 12 seconds. So basically, where is Benevolence? Where'd you go, buddy? I have no idea. Here we go, Benevolence. If you use this single target heal on them, you also make them go faster. Could be useful for some fights. Could be interesting in PvP. The third option is Bastion of Light. Benevolence has a 50% chance to cause your Rejuvenate to tick twice. So that's one of those ones that someone's going to have to do the math about. and see where Rejuvenate can be useful in that case. I don't even know where it is on my bars. Please forgive me. Here we go. See if where Rejuvenate kicks in there for the numbers. At level 47, you have another choice to make. And this is much like Telekinetics and Balance. Force Empowerment is somewhere on that tree. Like, it's not usually the healer's job to be bringing the increase in mastery, endurance, and presence to their group. But hey, it's an option. And your other two options are these two passive abilities. So the first is Force Defense. Channeling Healing Trance grants a stack of Force Defense. Each stack grants 2% damage reduction per stack. Max of 3 stacks. So if you need less damage to be taken, that's your one. And this is interesting. There is no death. There is no death. Oh, I skipped 43? Oh, I did. Thanks. I'll backtrack that up. If a friendly player has Rejuvenate applied to them and are killed during the duration of Rejuvenate, your next Revival, Rally, or Deliverance is instant. In addition, when taking direct damage, the cooldown on Force Barrier is reduced by 3 seconds, and the cooldown on Rescue is reduced by 2 seconds. This effect can occur once every 5 seconds. That's just kind of super interesting one there. So let's backtrack. At level 39, you'll pick up Healing Trance, much like you would before. But at level 43, you actually get to choose between 3 different abilities that affect Healing Trance. So the first is Potent Resolve. And these are all passives. Mental Alacrity increases the healing done of Healing Trance by 3%, so just a boost. Healing Trance builds stacks of Researching Power. Each stack increases the healing done by Benevolence, Rally, or Deliverance by 3% per stack, stacks up to 3 times, and that's called Resurging Power. And your last option is Rejuvenating Aura. Healing Trance spreads your Rejuvenate to up to 8 allies within 5 meters. So very interesting. Rejuvenate is a multi-target with this option, and the other two are kind of damage boosts that you're gonna have to do some math about to figure out what's better. And what's interesting is if you can combine Rejuvenating Aura with that There Is No Death, could be an interesting combination there, especially in any fights where your friends are dying a lot. So at level 51, you'll pick up Salvation, much like you would before. And at level 60, those choices that are kind of similar across all 3 trees will kick in. But of course, at level 64, you will pick up your Wandering Mend to wind up all your wonderful healing abilities on this class. What's going to be kind of interesting is the level 73 choice, I think, for our healers. Phase Walk, Force Lift, and Telekinetic Blitz. So in the past, healers had a potential option to pick up Telekinetic Blitz using a specific set bonus. Otherwise, it was useless. They shouldn't be attacking at all. Their job is to heal mainly. But we don't really know much about how set bonuses are going to work in the future. We know they're not going to be called set bonuses. We know they're going to be called legendary implants. We have seen some of the legendary implants and what they look like, but we don't have a guarantee of what is and isn't going to be there yet. So Telekinetic Blitz may just be totally off the charts for the Seer Sage, and definitely going to look between Force Lift and Phase Walk to get the heck out of the fight when they're getting hurt. So I hope you liked this really in-depth look. Oh, we'll take a look at the tree right here real fast first. Wait. Foresight. At level 23, Conveyance. At level 35, Mend Wounds. At level 43, Force Shelter. At level 51, Clairvoyance. At level 60, Resplendence. At level 68, Altruism. At level 73, Amnesty. At level 78, Soothing Protection. Yeah, so that's this is what the combat switching looks like. It's really easy to switch between the 3 different disciplines. As far as I understand, you can do it anytime you're outside of an instance. And it's very, very easy on the test server right now to switch between those 3 options. If you haven't seen it yet, they're also working on what's called loadouts, where you can kind of save your choices. You can save your choices between disciplines You should save your gear as well. It should save your choices here. It should save where your abilities are on the bar. It's not 100% working yet right now, but the idea is you should have a lot of fun being able to switch between these options and make choices based on how you want to play that day or that fight. If you want to take a look at more videos about Star Wars The Old Republic, subscribe to this channel because we're going to be doing plenty as we head into the expansion. And if you want to support this huge project about the game, visit Swtorista.com/support. As always, to my dear, dear sages, may the Force be with you.